What's up, guys and gals? This is Jared here with cigaradvisor.com, and today we have a very special Cigar Advisor panel review. Now, as you guys normally see when we're doing these panel reviews, we're reviewing a cigar. We're talking, all together. We're all, at the same place, at the same time, smoking the cigar and giving our input. But recently, we've actually, at Famous, partnered with Pinhook Bourbon, and our experts behind the scenes have found a perfect pairing with their brand new Bourbon War 5-year Vertical Series, okay, and our Siboney Reserve by Aganorsa Leaf. So the experts thought it was a perfect pair, but then they threw it in our lap to put it to the test, so that's exactly what we're going to do here. So to add up a little bit more fun into it, we decided that we were going to do these reviews blind and independently, and we weren't going to discuss our notes beforehand. Part of that is because we admit we're not bourbon experts, but that's why we're not trying to really give you a bourbon or a cigar review. What we're trying to do is give you a review of what we think these taste like when you put them together. So without further ado, let me introduce the lovely panel, which is going to be myself, John Pulo, and as always, Gary Korb. So let's get into the reviews and see what it tastes like.
Thanks, Jared. Yeah, I had a couple of comments to add about this pairing that we're doing today, the Pinhook Vertical Series 5-year and the Siboney Reserve Toro from Aganorsa Leaf. And take an opportunity to talk a little bit about the cigar first. As we know, Aganorsa Leaf has this huge range of Nicaraguan tobaccos that they work with, Corojo, Criollo, Habano, coming from all over the country. And I found that their cigars serve fans of that flavor well. And in the case of Siboney Reserve, or I should say in my case of Siboney Reserve, this Toro, it's cedar first and foremost. And there's a streak of pepper and leather lying underneath the surface, along with a pinch of salt. Good amount of smoke. It's about medium in body, and there's some times when you're smoking the cigar that it gets a little creamy and a little sweet, kind of a hidden secret, and that was a happy surprise.
This is a cigar that's been made for Famous Smoke Shop. It is a regular release, and it is an all Nicaraguan leaf blend, which makes it a puro. And the blend consists of a beautiful, dark, oily Habano wrapper from Nicaragua. And the core tobaccos, the filler and minor, are mostly Criollo and Corojo tobaccos, which Aganorsa does an amazing job on. They're all grown on the Aganorsa State Farms in Nicaragua. And the core flavors are generally something like, it's kind of earthy, it's kind of woody, it's got some pepper in it, and a little bit of sweet spice. So let's just take a puff, make sure we're on the right track here. Yeah, some nice little sweetness coming off there. All right, let's go to the bourbon.
Now, the bourbon was aged 5 years, and kind of what's neat is, I talked to the co-owner, Sean Josephs, about how they went about approaching their bourbon, and he has this kind of a wine approach where instead of trying to make every batch taste the same, he celebrates their differences in different vintages, almost like a wine, like I said. So he's actually a sommelier too. So let's go ahead and see how these go together. I waited, I just recently ashed this. I waited till I got about an inch in because I wanted to get a little bit more into the meat and potatoes of the Siboney, which I know the cigar in and out. I've smoked quite a few of these, but I've never had the bourbon. So let's go ahead, take a puff, and then we'll take a sip and see what we got. Wow, that is smooth. So if you've looked at our reviews in the past of the Siboney Reserve, I noted that it was pretty peppery, and it is a peppery cigar. It's not the most full throttle thing out there, but it's got a decent amount of pepper. And the nice thing about this is the pepper, when I took that sip of this Pinhook, just vanished. It went away completely, and it smooths it over. It's just really nice. It's got this kind of like almost like a pastry or baked good sweetness to it, with a little bit of like fruit mixed in. Excellent flavor, very smooth. I'm not a bourbon guy, and this is a bourbon that I would drink regularly.
Now, as far as the Pinhook 5-year. This is from their Bourbon War Vertical Series, 104 proof. So this is a neat experiment to see how a batch of bourbon changes with each individual year of age. So the way the story goes is, if I have this right, is a couple years ago, they filled this one big group of barrels with one particular recipe. And every year, starting last year, when it was aged 4 years, they release and bottle a limited amount of bourbon from these barrels. And they'll do this every year up until the bourbon in the last remaining barrels will have been aged 12 years. So if we look at the mix, it's a 75% corn that's in the mash bill, 20% rye. And as I'm learning more about bourbon, the corn flavor will fade with aging. But the fact that there's so much of it, I think, in this recipe is what gives this one a lot of its sweetness. And the rye is typically what adds spice and cinnamon to an overall flavor profile.
It's 104 proof, and that means it's a 52% ABV. The bourbon is named for a racehorse that ran in the Preakness and the Belmont, so it must have been a pretty fast horse, I can tell you that. And their whole theme around Pinhook is centered around the racehorsing industry, so thoroughbreds. So, you know, that's kind of cool. And of course, it's Kentucky, so that kind of makes sense too. The flavors that you're supposed to be getting from this are like a butterscotch and maybe some black cherry, a little chicory, even some chocolate, things like that. So we're going to see what happens when we put the two together.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and do something that I learned previously, which is to leave a little bit of smoke in your mouth and then take a sip and let the two actually play on your palate simultaneously. So let me go ahead and try that. I'm going to take a little puff, let some of it out. Okay, so interestingly, that's a contrast. It's bringing out this almost sparkling quality to the bourbon, like this a little bit of tingle in the bourbon. So it's a little sharper in flavor, and it still amplifies the sweetness. So that's two ways that you can go about trying this. But I have to give it to the experts over at on the famous side. With us being on the Cigar Advisor side, they really picked a powerhouse pairing here. I didn't know what to expect going in. This is a blind tasting. This is my first time. And if my experience is anything like what you can expect, you're in for a real treat.
There's a lot of cinnamon up front. That rye is flexing. There's a spicy bite and some dry hit on your throat. But it's already starting to transform into like a sweeter fruit flavor, like a darker black cherry. And even now, as I'm talking more, a toasty kind of caramelized sensation and like a fluffy sweet finish. It's almost like a roasted marshmallow, if I had to compare it to a food.
Ooh, wow. That's tasty. That is a tasty bourbon. It's kind of sweet. Am I getting any butterscotch or any of the other flavors? I don't know, but I did get a little hint of vanilla in there. So let's see how it goes with our cigar. So mixing it with the bourbon, what I'm getting is a really nice, smooth combination. The cigar tends to be a little peppery, but just as I was mixing it with the bourbon, it started to round out, and I got that nice woody note, maybe a little bit of leather, some of that sweet tobacco, and then you put it together with this. Oh yeah, that's good stuff. So anyway, I'm gonna just kick back here.
As for this pairing and why I think it works, one thing I learned in this process is that Nicaraguan cigars especially tend to go well with American whiskeys and bourbons. Now, that's not to say that others don't, but let's face it, Nicaragua has a woody and spicy side, and in many cases, sweet balances spicy, and that often means bourbon. So the Siboney's cedar and pepper kind of intertwine nicely with that shot of Pinhook cinnamon that arrives on your tongue first. And then there's that occasional creaminess from the cigar that we talked about. That jives really nicely with the caramel and roasted marshmallow finish that's on this bourbon. But try it and let us know what you think.
It's really nice and smooth and creamy, and I'm getting some sweetness out of it. Like I said, the peppers die down a little bit. And then of course we have the bourbon, which now if it was much peatier or something like that, it may not be a good match. But this is very similar in character. It's got a little bit of sweetness to it. Actually, it's got a lot of sweetness to it, and it's very, very even in terms of how it lays on the palate. It's just a really good match. I can't recommend it highly enough.
Hey, thanks for checking out that review. If you like more videos like this, please like and subscribe to us right here on YouTube. You can also check out Cigar Advisor on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and click on that notification bell right here to get notified anytime we have new video content. We'll see you guys next time.